She pulled 20 wolves from freezing water one by one. The last one was the Alpha King. These bowed under the weight of frost, their branches creaking as though whispering secrets of the ancient woods. At the edge of this frozen expanse, where the forest met the mountains, the river lay trapped beneath a thick sheet of ice. Its surface gleamed like glass, cracked and trembling with the desperate struggle beneath. Ilara moved silently across the snow, her boots leaving only faint tracks. Her cloak, dark as midnight, billowed behind her, catching the icy wind. Her eyes were sharp, alert, scanning the frozen landscape with the ease of someone who had spent a lifetime on the edge of danger. Though young, her presence carried the weight of experience. Her hands were calloused from years of work with animals and weapons alike. She paused at the riverbank where the ice shivered violently. Her breath caught in her chest as she saw them, shapes thrashing beneath the frozen surface. Wolves. 20 of them, their fur coated in ice, paws scraping uselessly against the unyielding river. Their eyes, wide and frantic, met hers, pleading, demanding, begging for life. Without a second thought, Ilara kicked off her boots, leaving them in the snow. She felt the cold bite at her skin as she knelt and broke the ice with her bare hands, striking with all the strength in her arms. The cracks spidered outward, the ice groaning like a living thing. Then she plunged her hands into the freezing water, feeling the sting of frostbite bite deep into her fingers, the icy river swallowing her arms to the elbows. The first wolf broke the surface, gasping as if life had returned in the smallest dose. Ilara hauled it to the bank, her muscles trembling, her teeth chattering. She wrapped it in her cloak, rubbing its fur to restore warmth, murmuring words she had not spoken to another soul in years. "You'll be safe now," she whispered. "You'll live." One by one, she repeated the process. Each wolf that emerged was heavier, more desperate than the last. She felt the ache of exhaustion creep through her limbs, the frost seeping into her bones, but she refused to stop. She could hear their breathing, shallow and panicked, their lives dangling by the fragile thread of her courage. By the time she reached the 10th wolf, the snow had turned to slush under her knees, her cloak soaked, frozen in parts to her skin. The wolves began to show signs of trust, huddling close when she rubbed their fur. Their eyes, once full of panic, now carried a flicker of recognition, an understanding that she was their lifeline. Then she saw the last wolf. Its body was larger, more powerful than the others, and even through the ice, she sensed intelligence that went beyond instinct. Its eyes glowed faintly, an amber light that seemed almost unnatural. It did not thrash like the others. Instead, it pressed against the ice, struggling with calculated patience, as if aware that survival required more than brute force. Ilara approached cautiously. Something in her chest tightened, an unexplainable pull toward this creature. Her hands went numb in the icy water as she worked to free it. Her heart raced not from the cold, but from the weight of something ancient pressing against her soul. When the wolf finally broke through, it lunged forward, but not at her. It staggered, exhausted, yet its gaze remained locked on hers. For a moment there was silence, as though the world itself had stopped to watch. And in that silence, Ilara felt a strange recognition, a thread that tied her fate to this wolf in a way she could not yet understand. She wrapped it in her cloak, though it was too large to be completely covered. The Alpha King, as the villagers would later whisper, had awakened. She had saved it, yet somehow she knew the river had not given up its secrets lightly. Something in the forest shifted, a tension that made her skin prickle with unease. By the time she had pulled all 20 wolves from the river, Ilara's body trembled violently. Her lips were blue, her fingers stiff and cracked from the frost. Yet she did not pause to consider her own suffering. Her eyes swept across the wolves now huddled around her, their breath steaming in the cold air. Some nuzzled her hands, others rested their heads against her knees, but the last wolf remained slightly apart, regal even in exhaustion, its amber eyes burning into hers. "You," You are different, she said softly, though she knew it could not hear her words the way humans could. There is something in you, something more. The forest was silent around her, yet she felt as though unseen eyes were watching, waiting, judging. She wrapped the wolves as best as she could and began the trek back to her village, the pack following her in obedient silence. She could feel the alphas gaze upon her the entire time, sharp and piercing, as if measuring her worth. By the time she reached the village, the first light of dawn had begun to color the sky in faint shades of pink and gold. Villagers gathered at the edge of the forest, their eyes wide with shock and awe at the sight of the wolves following a single human. They whispered hurriedly, fear and wonder mixing in their voices. She pulled them from the river, one woman gasped. And the last one, the biggest one, an old man murmured, clutching his staff. It is the Alpha King. He should not be freed. Alara ignored them, guiding the wolves to her small cabin at the village's edge. She had learned long ago that villagers often feared what they did not understand. She could not explain the bond she felt with the creatures, nor the strange pull in her chest toward the final wolf. Perhaps it was destiny, or perhaps it was some ancient magic in the forest, but she knew that life had changed in that moment, for her and for the wolves. That night, the Alpha King approached her cabin while the others slept. Its massive form moved silently across the snow, the muscles beneath its fur tense with power. It stopped at the edge of her door, eyes glowing in the moonlight. Alara stepped outside, cloak wrapped tightly around her, and met its gaze. You are no ordinary wolf, she whispered, her voice steady despite the chill. I can feel it. You carry something older than this forest, older than me. The Alpha did not move closer, nor did it retreat. Its eyes seemed to pierce her very soul, weighing her courage, her heart, her intentions. For a long moment, she felt as though she stood not before a wolf, but before a being who could see all that she had lost, all that she had feared, all that she had yet to become. A howl rose from deep in the forest, long and mournful, echoing through the frozen trees. The Alpha lifted its head, answering, and the sound sent a shiver through Alara's body. It was a call to the wild, a reminder that the world was larger, darker, and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. You are not alone, she murmured, though she was unsure if it understood. And neither am I anymore. The Alpha's eyes softened ever so slightly, a glimmer of acknowledgement that did not belong to any ordinary animal. It stepped closer until its massive body loomed over her, yet there was no threat, only a strange, undeniable presence that made her heart race. In that moment, as snow fell silently around them and the river whispered beneath its frozen cover, Alara understood that her life had shifted. She had saved 20 lives, yes, but in doing so, she had awakened something that would change the fate of the forest, the village, and herself. The bond between human and wolf had begun, and the first thread of destiny had been woven. The night grew colder, yet she did not retreat. She remained there, standing before the Alpha King, sensing the unspoken words between them. Somewhere in the forest, unseen eyes watched. Somewhere, ancient magic stirred. And somewhere deep inside her, a spark of understanding flickered. The journey was only beginning. The Alpha King turned, then disappeared into the shadows of the forest, leaving Alara alone beneath the moonlight. She felt a shiver of anticipation, a thrill that ran deeper than fear. She knew the next step would demand courage unlike any she had known. And for the first time, she welcomed it. The morning sun struggled to pierce the frost-laden forest, casting long, silver shadows across the snow. Alara's cabin was quiet, yet the sound of heavy paws moving through the snow outside reminded her that the wolves had not left. They circled her home, watching, protective, loyal, and above them all the last one remained apart, the Alpha King. She had tried to understand him, tried to read the amber flames in his eyes, but the more she looked, the more he seemed a puzzle too vast for one human to solve. He was not just a wolf. He was something older, wiser, a presence that demanded respect rather than affection. Yet the strange pull between them persisted, a magnetic force neither of them fully understood. Alara stepped outside, the cold biting her cheeks, and the wolves parted slightly to let her pass. She breathed deeply, the crisp air filling her lungs, and looked toward the forest. The Alpha King's eyes met hers from the tree line, unblinking, intelligent. He did not move, but she could feel him watching, waiting, as though testing her. "You're more than a wolf," she whispered softly, her voice carrying over the snow. "I feel it, something inside you, something broken." The wolf tilted his head, and for a brief heartbeat she thought she saw a flicker of understanding, almost human. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows of the trees, leaving Alara with a shiver and a sense of foreboding. Days passed, and life in the village continued under the heavy weight of winter. Yet the villagers watched her with suspicion. Some whispered of dark magic, others of curses long dormant. No one dared enter the forest, not after what had happened at the frozen river. But Alara did not fear the woods. She felt their secrets calling to her, guiding her steps. At night she dreamed of the Alpha King. His voice echoed in her mind, deep and commanding, yet tinged with sorrow. He spoke not in words she could hear, but in feelings and images. She saw visions of a forest engulfed in shadow, of wolves moving under the guidance of a mysterious power, and of a crown forged from moonlight and ice. One night, the dreams became more vivid. She saw the Alpha King shift from his wolf form into a man. His eyes were still amber, glowing faintly in the dark. His hair fell like a river of midnight over broad shoulders, and there was an undeniable strength in his stance. He did not speak, yet she could feel his questions, his doubts, his loneliness. When she awoke, the vision lingered. The Alpha King was no ordinary wolf. Something ancient and powerful was bound to him, something that carried a curse older than the oldest trees. She knew that if she wished to help him, she would have to enter a world beyond her understanding, a world of spirits, magic, and ancient rules. The following evening she felt a presence outside her cabin. She opened the door and saw him, wolf and human alike, powerful, alert. The Alpha King stepped forward, circling her cabin slowly. His amber eyes never left hers. She realized then that he was testing her, measuring her courage, her will, and perhaps even her heart. "You are different from the others," she whispered, though her voice trembled slightly. "You are not only powerful, you are lonely." The Alpha King's gaze softened just for a moment and then hardened again. He let out a low growl, not threatening but deliberate, as if warning her that the forest's secrets were not hers to command. Alara felt her heart tighten. She had never encountered a creature so commanding, so alive with both danger and beauty. The connection between them grew stronger, unspoken yet undeniable. She knew the Alpha King was not only a guardian of the forest, but also a being trapped in time, bound by a curse she could not yet comprehend. One evening, compelled by an unknown force, she followed him into the forest. Snow crunched under her feet, the trees looming like silent giants, their branches coated in frost. The Alpha King led her deeper than she had ever gone, past familiar trails and into an ancient glade where the air hummed with power. There, beneath the light of a pale moon, he shifted before her eyes. The massive wolf arched, bones and muscles twisting until a man stood in his place. His eyes burned with the same amber fire, and his presence was overwhelming, a mixture of danger and sorrow. "You," she breathed, unable to find words. He studied her silently, his gaze weighing every thought, every fear. Then slowly he spoke, though the sound was not a voice but a feeling that resonated directly within her mind. "You freed me," the thought said, "but you do not yet understand what that means." Alara swallowed hard, shivering from cold and awe. I know there is something more," she said. "I feel it, I feel you. I don't know what it is, but I know I cannot turn away." The Alpha King's eyes softened again, and for the first time she saw a glimmer of vulnerability in him. The curse that binds me, it will not end easily. Those who seek it have long since vanished. I am trapped between forms, between worlds. Only one who dares to walk the same path can help me." Her heart pounded. She did not fully understand what he asked, yet a strange certainty settled within her. She could not leave him to this fate, nor could she walk away from the bond that had begun with the frozen river. "You are asking a lot," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I am only one human." "And yet," he replied in her mind, "it is one human who may save me." The tension between them was unbearable, a mixture of fear, longing, and respect. She felt the pull of destiny stronger than ever. The Alpha King was not just a wolf, nor simply a man. He was a force of nature, bound by magic and sorrow, and now, somehow, her life was tied to his. Suddenly, the forest around them shifted. Shadows moved unnaturally, the wind carrying whispers that chilled her to the bone. From the darkness emerged shapes unlike any wolf she had seen before. Their eyes glowed red, and their movements were sharp, unnatural, as though born of shadow itself. The Alpha King stepped forward, human form shifting back to wolf in a blur of motion. He positioned himself between her and the approaching threat, muscles tensed, teeth bared. Alara realized that while she had been brave, the danger now was beyond any ordinary test. "You cannot fight this alone," she said, feeling both fear and resolve. "I do not need to fight alone," he growled. "You are here, that is enough." The pack of shadow wolves surged forward, their movements swift and precise. The Alpha King leapt into action, fangs snapping, claws tearing through ice and snow. Alara watched, her heart racing, knowing that she must act as well. She grabbed a branch coated in frost, swinging it to keep the shadows at bay, her courage rising despite the cold and the fear. The battle was chaotic, a dance of shadows, teeth, and snow. The Alpha King fought with skill and power beyond imagination, yet even he seemed strained against the unnatural force of the shadow wolves. Alara realized that their bond was not only emotional, it was essential. She had to be brave, had to trust in the connection that had begun at the frozen river. One shadow wolf lunged at her. Reflexively, she dodged, and the Alpha King intercepted, striking it with such force that snow exploded in every direction. Yet more came, relentless and unnerving. The forest itself seemed alive with dark intent. As the fight reached its peak, a howl rose from deep within the woods. It was not a wolf's howl, nor fully human, but something that resonated through the very air, shaking snow from branches and making her chest ache. The Alpha King paused, ears twitching, eyes narrowing. He turned to her, his amber gaze filled with a mix of warning and determination. "This is only the beginning," he said. Though his lips did not move, she understood perfectly. "The curse stirs, the forest remembers, and those who seek me will not rest." Alara's heart pounded. She was terrified, yet something deeper, courage, love, destiny, rose within her. She knew then that she could not turn back. She had freed him from the river, and now she would stand by him against whatever darkness awaited. The shadow wolves vanished into the forest as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving silence, snow, and the lingering threat of more. The Alpha King returned to his human form, exhausted but composed, his gaze lingering on her with an intensity that made her shiver. "You are braver than any I have met," he said, his voice soft yet powerful. "Perhaps you are the one who can help me reclaim what was lost." Alara nodded, though words failed her. She did not fully understand what lay ahead, yet she knew her path was bound to his. Together they would face the darkness, the curse, and the forest itself. As dawn broke, painting the snow in pale gold, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. It came from within, from the bond forged in fear, courage, and trust. The Alpha King stepped closer, silent and imposing, yet not threatening. For the first time she felt that they were equals, partners in a world of shadows and ancient magic. But the forest whispered still, and Alara knew the darkness was far from gone. Alara sensed it the moment she stepped beyond her cabin. The trees leaned closer together, their frozen branches woven like watchful hands. The wind did not howl anymore. It whispered. Each step she took felt measured, as if the forest itself was counting her courage. The Alpha King walked beside her in silence. In the daylight, he stayed in his wolf form, large and powerful, his dark fur marked with silver streaks that seemed to glow when sunlight touched them. He moved with purpose, leading her deeper into the forest than she had ever gone. The other wolves followed at a distance, forming a silent guard. Alara wrapped her cloak tighter around herself. "Is this where the curse began?" she asked softly. The Alpha King slowed. His head turned slightly toward her. His eyes met hers, heavy with memory. "Yes," his voice echoed inside her mind. "And where it must be faced." They reached a place where the snow thinned and the ground beneath showed black earth and twisted roots. An ancient circle of stones rose from the ground, cracked and worn by time. Symbols were carved into them, old and sharp, glowing faintly as if remembering their purpose. Alara felt her chest tighten. "This place feels wrong," she said. "It remembers what was taken," the Alpha King replied, "and what was broken." He stepped into the stone circle. The air shifted instantly. The forest fell silent as if holding its breath. Slowly his form changed. The wolf's shape folded inward, reshaping into a man once more. He stood tall, his dark hair falling loose, his amber eyes burning brighter than before. But something was different. Pain crossed his face. His hands clenched. For the first time, Alara saw the weight he carried. "I was once king," he said, "not only of wolves but of balance. The forest, the rivers, the mountains, none ruled alone. We guarded each other." Alara listened, her heart aching. "What happened?" she asked. "A queen," he answered. "Not of flesh but of will. She feared the wild. She wanted control, not balance. She bound me with her magic, turned my strength against me, and cursed my blood so I could never fully belong to one form." Alara stepped closer. "And the shadow wolves?" "Remnants," he said. "Pieces of my pack twisted by her power, lost but not beyond saving." The stones around them began to glow brighter. The ground trembled slightly beneath Alara's feet. "The curse is waking," he warned. "Because you are here," she swallowed. "Then tell me what I must do." The Alpha King looked at her, truly looked at her, as if searching for doubt, fear, or regret. What he found instead made his expression soften. "To break the curse," he said, "the forest demands truth, not strength, not sacrifice of blood, but the willingness to face what was lost." Before Alara could ask what that meant, the world around them shifted. The forest blurred, cold vanished, and suddenly Alara stood in a place that was not the present. She saw herself younger, standing by the same river but without ice. Her family stood beside her, laughing, alive. The memory struck her like a blow, her breath caught. "No," she whispered, "this isn't real." But the pain was real. The longing was real. The Alpha King stood beside her, his form faint, as if he too was only half present. "The forest shows what binds us," he said gently. "You must choose whether to remain or to move forward." Alara's hands shook. She had buried this grief deep inside her. She had survived by refusing to look back. But now the forest forced her to remember. She stepped toward the memory, tears freezing on her lashes. "I loved them," she said. "I still do." The vision began to crack like ice breaking under pressure. "And yet," the Alpha King said, "you are still here." Alara straightened, her voice steadied. "I carry them," she said, "but I will not let grief rule me." The memory shattered. The forest returned. The stones dimmed slightly as if acknowledging her choice. But the test was not over. The ground split open at the center of the circle. From the darkness rose a figure made of shadow and frost, tall and crowned with sharp light. Her eyes burned with cold purpose. The spectral queen. "So," she said, her voice echoing from everywhere at once, "the human dares to stand where kings once fell." Alara felt fear surge through her, but she did not step back. "You are the one who cursed him," Alara said. The queen smiled. I preserved order, he defied it. The Alpha King growled low, stepping forward. You feared what could not be controlled. I feared chaos, the Queen replied, and you were chaos. The air grew heavy. The stones trembled again. You freed him, the Queen said to Alara, but freedom demands payment. Alara's heart pounded. What payment? The Queen's gaze sharpened. One of you will remain bound, one will walk away. The forest seemed to lean inward, listening. The Alpha King turned to Alara, his expression firm, resolute. I knew this, he said. This is the price. No, Alara said quickly. There must be another way. The Queen laughed softly. Always the same hope. Alara stepped forward, placing herself between them. You want balance, she said to the Queen. Then see this. She reached out, placing her hand over her heart. I am not powerful, I am not royal, but I chose to save lives when I could walk away. I chose to face grief instead of hiding from it. If balance matters, then choice matters too. The forest stirred. The Queen's smile faltered. The Alpha King felt it, the shift, small but real. Alara, he said softly, if this fails, she looked at him, then we face it together. The Queen raised her hand, gathering shadow and light. Very well, she said, then the final truth shall decide. The ground beneath Alara vanished. She fell into darkness. Voices surrounded her, not cruel, not kind, just ancient. She felt herself stripped of fear, of doubt, of pride. And then she understood. The curse was not fueled by hatred. It was fueled by isolation. The Alpha King had been bound because he stood alone. She reached for him not with hands but with will. I see you, she whispered into the darkness. Not as a king, not as a beast, but as someone who was left alone. The darkness cracked. Light poured through. The Alpha King screamed not in pain but in release. The Queen staggered back, her form fracturing. This is not possible, she hissed. It is, Alara said, standing once more in the circle, because balance does not mean control, it means connection. The stones flared bright. The Queen dissolved into frost and wind, her power unraveling into the forest. Silence followed. The Alpha King fell to one knee, breathing hard, his form flickering between wolf and man. Alara, he said weakly, the curse is breaking but not finished. She rushed to his side, holding him upright. What's happening? The final bond, he said. It requires a choice, not now, soon. The forest calmed. The stones sank back into the earth. The wolves howled in the distance, not in fear but in hope. Alara helped the Alpha King stand. He looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. You have changed everything, he said. She shook her head. We did. But deep inside she felt it. The final cost had not yet been named. And destiny was not finished with them. Snow still covered the ground, but it no longer felt lifeless. The air held a quiet tension, like a held breath. Alara stood beside the Alpha King at the edge of the stone circle, watching the trees sway slowly, as if listening for something yet to be spoken. The Alpha King's form was unstable. At times he stood fully human, tall and strong, his amber eyes steady. At other moments his shape flickered, shadows of fur and claws passing across his skin like echoes of what he once was. Each change left him weaker. Alara felt fear settle deep in her chest. You said the curse was breaking, she said softly. Why does it still hurt you? The Alpha King looked away toward the forest. Because the curse was not only magic, he replied. It was a rule, and rules demand endings. They returned to the village as dusk fell. The wolves followed silently, no longer hiding. Villagers gathered again, but this time their fear was mixed with awe. They had seen the shadow wolves retreat. They felt the forest change. That night, Alara could not sleep. The fire in her cabin burned low as she sat near the window, watching snow drift slowly down. The Alpha King stood outside beneath the moon, his figure still thoughtful. She stepped outside to join him. The forest feels different, she said. Yes, he replied. It prepares to choose. Her heart tightened. Choose what? He turned to her fully. In the moonlight he looked almost human, yet something ancient lived behind his eyes. Whether I remain king or become free, Alara swallowed. Are those not the same? For me, he said gently, they are not. He explained then, the forest demanded balance. A king bound to it forever could guard it, rule it, and protect it, but never walk beyond it. Never live a life shaped by choice. Never love without cost. Freedom, however, meant letting go of the crown, the power, and the bond that tied his life to the forest's heartbeat. And the wolves? Alara asked. They will follow balance, he said, with or without me. Alara's chest ached. And you, she whispered. If I choose freedom, he said, the forest will take what remains of the curse. It will fade from me, but I will become fully mortal. Silence fell between them. Alara understood then. The final choice was not about power, it was about separation. The forest stirred that night. The wind rose, circling the village. Snow lifted from the ground in spirals of pale light. The villagers watched from their doors as roots broke through frozen earth, forming a path toward the ancient glade. The forest was calling. Alara and the Alpha King walked together, side by side, wolves following behind. When they reached the stone circle, it had changed. The stone stood taller now, glowing softly, warm against the cold night. A voice rose, not loud but deep. King of balance, it said, the time has come. The Alpha King stepped forward alone. State your choice, the forest demanded. Alara felt panic rise. She wanted to speak, to stop this, but she knew this moment was not hers to command. The Alpha King turned back to her. In his eyes, she saw gratitude, respect, and something deeper, something unspoken but understood. You gave me more than freedom, he said. You reminded me what it means to be seen. Her voice trembled. You don't have to choose alone. I must, he replied. But know this, whatever I become, you changed my fate. The forest waited. He turned forward. I choose, the ground shook. Before he could finish, Alara stepped into the circle. Gasps rose from the villagers watching from afar. The forest went silent. This choice affects both of us, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. You said the curse fed on isolation. Then do not ask him to choose alone. The stones pulsed. The voice spoke again, slower now. Human, do you offer bond or release? Alara closed her eyes. She saw the frozen river, the wolves beneath the ice. The moment she chose action over fear, she opened her eyes. I offer balance, she said, not control, not sacrifice, but shared path. The forest trembled not in anger but recognition. The Alpha King looked at her, stunned. Alara, he said softly, this could bind you to the forest. She met his gaze. I am already bound by choice. Light rose from the stones, wrapping around them both. The forest showed its final truth. Alara saw the future split into paths. In one, the Alpha King stood alone, eternal and powerful, watching generations fade. In another, he walked beside her, mortal but whole, the forest protected by those who remembered its lessons. The voice returned. Balance is not held by one, it said. It is carried by many. The light surged. The curse shattered completely. The Alpha King cried out, not in pain but transformation. His form settled, no longer flickering. When the light faded, he stood fully human, breathing hard, alive in a way he had never been before. The wolves howled, not in mourning but triumph. The forest calmed. Snow began to melt. Spring touched the edges of the land. The stones sank into the earth, their purpose fulfilled. The villagers watched as Alara and the man who had once been the Alpha King emerged from the glade together. He was no longer crowned by power, but by peace. Weeks passed. The forest healed. The wolves returned to the wild, no longer bound by shadow. They still visited, sometimes watching from the tree line, but they no longer needed a king to command them. Alara and the former Alpha King lived near the forest's edge. He learned the rhythm of human life, fire, food, laughter. He worked with his hands. He listened more than he spoke. At times he stood beneath the trees, eyes distant, remembering what he once was. Alara would join him. You miss it, she said one evening. Yes, he admitted. But I do not regret. The river flowed freely again, no ice trapped beneath its surface. One morning, Alara stood by the water, watching sunlight dance across it. He joined her, standing close, not touching but present. "You chose uncertainty," he said. "Why?" She smiled softly. "Because certainty without choice is another kind of cage." He nodded, understanding fully. The forest remained powerful, mysterious, and alive, but it no longer demanded fear. It remembered kindness. It remembered courage. And it remembered the human who stepped into ice for lives not her own. As seasons turned, stories spread. Not of a wolf king or a cursed queen, but of a woman who pulled 20 wolves from freezing water, and of the last one who chose to walk beside her, not above her. And the forest watched, not as a ruler, but as a witness.